The massive space station Kepler Prime floated silently in the void between star systems, its crystal spires gleaming under the light of distant suns. Inside its central chamber, 12 different alien species had gathered for what they believed would be a routine first contact meeting. The air hummed with translator devices converting clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones into understandable speech. Ambassador Hannah Kim walked through the airlock with measured steps, her black diplomatic uniform bearing the simple Earth insignia. Behind her followed 2 junior diplomats, their eyes wide as they took in the strange collection of beings before them. The humans had traveled for months to reach this neutral meeting point, their ship Taikwang now docked at the station's outer ring. Council Speaker Veltar rose from his floating platform, his 4 muscular arms spread in what the humans had been told was a gesture of welcome. His blue-scaled skin rippled with bioelectric patterns that supposedly indicated peaceful intentions. Around the circular chamber, other delegates watched with various appendages, eyes, and sensory organs focused intently on the newcomers. "Welcome, human delegate," Veltar said, his voice carrying through the universal translator with only a slight mechanical distortion. "Your arrival marks a historic moment for our peaceful coalition. However, your vessel has caused quite a stir among our technical staff." Hannah's expression remained professionally neutral, but she felt a small knot of concern form in her stomach. The journey to this meeting had taken careful planning, and Earth's leaders had been very specific about making a good first impression. "Is there a problem with our docking procedures, Speaker Veltar? We followed all the protocols your people transmitted to us." The insectoid representative from the Clixon Collective shifted nervously in her specially designed chair, her mandibles clicking in what the briefing materials had described as anxiety. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber's soft lighting as she leaned forward. "Not the procedures, human ambassador. The ship itself troubles us. Those hull modifications, the redundant power cores, the unusual energy signatures. Why does an exploration vessel need such robust construction?" Across the chamber, other delegates began murmuring among themselves. The crystalline Vorth Collective's formations dimmed slightly, their shared consciousness apparently disturbed by whatever their scans had revealed. The aquatic Merc representative's breathing apparatus bubbled more rapidly, and even the usually calm hegemony observers seemed on edge. Meanwhile, aboard the Taikwang, Captain Jaiwan Park stood on the bridge watching her tactical displays with growing bewilderment. Her ship hung in space surrounded by what appeared to be the entire defensive fleet of Kepler Prime, though the alien vessels maintained what seemed like an unusually respectful distance. The continuous sensor sweeps washing over her hull were far more intensive than anything she had experienced during routine inspections at human stations. "Captain," called Engineering Chief Miho Lee from his station near the rear of the bridge, "the aliens seem very interested in our backup reactor systems. They keep focusing their scans on our power distribution networks and emergency systems. Should I be concerned?" Jaiwan shook her head slowly, her dark hair catching the light from the bridge displays. She had served on dozens of ships during her career, from small patrol craft to massive exploration vessels, and the Taikwang was nothing special by human standards. It was a standard diplomatic cruiser, designed for long-range missions with adequate defenses and redundant systems to ensure crew survival in hostile environments. Every human ship was built the same way. "Not yet, Chief Lee," she replied, her voice calm despite her confusion. "But keep monitoring their scans closely. Something tells me they have never seen a ship built to actually survive out here." Back in the council chamber, the technical briefings were causing increasing alarm among the delegates. Data streams flowed across holographic displays, showing power curves, structural analysis, and weapons configurations that made no sense to beings who had known only peace for thousands of years. Technical Assessor Quindal, a tall, thin being with luminescent patches across his gray skin, approached Speaker Veltar with obvious urgency. His bioluminescent patches flashed orange and red as he whispered rapidly in the speaker's ear. Whatever he said made all 4 of Veltar's arms tense visibly. Hannah watched this exchange with growing unease. Her diplomatic training had prepared her for cultural misunderstandings, translation errors, and protocol disputes, but not for what appeared to be genuine fear. "Speaker Veltar, perhaps we could clarify any concerns about our vessel. We brought detailed technical specifications as a gesture of openness and trust." The offer seemed to make things worse rather than better. Several delegates actually moved back from the central speaking area, and the chamber's lighting dimmed as various species stress responses activated. The Vorth Collective's crystal formations turned deep purple, while the Clixon representatives' clicking became rapid and high-pitched. "Your specifications," Veltar said carefully, "indicate weapon systems capable of destroying cities. Your defensive shields could withstand direct impacts from asteroids. Your engines produce more power than our largest civilian vessels. This is not what we expected from a diplomatic mission. Hannah felt her eyebrows rise in surprise. She glanced at her aide, who looked equally confused. Speaker Veltar, with respect, the Taikwang carries standard exploration equipment. Any human vessel traveling in deep space requires adequate defenses and reliable systems. The universe can be a dangerous place. The silence that followed her words was profound and unsettling. 12 species that had ruled vast portions of the galaxy for millennia stared at the small human delegation with what could only be described as terror. In that moment, both sides began to realize that their understanding of normal was about to change forever. The council chamber had been filled with polite conversation about trade routes and cultural exchange when the doors suddenly burst open. Technical Assessor Quindal stumbled inside, his usually calm demeanor completely shattered. The tall, gray-skinned alien's bioluminescent patches blazed urgent orange and red across his entire body, a display that made every delegate in the room freeze with concern. Honored Council, Quindal gasped, his breathing rapid and shallow, the human vessel, we were wrong. It's not what we thought at all. Ambassador Hannah Kim looked up from the data pad containing her carefully prepared speech about peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit. She had been about to discuss Earth's proposals for sharing agricultural techniques and medical knowledge. The interruption caught her completely off guard, and she felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. "I'm sorry, Technical Assessor," she said politely. "Is there still an issue with our ship? We thought all docking procedures had been completed successfully." Speaker Veltar's 4 eyes moved rapidly across the glowing technical report that Quindal thrust into his hands. As he read, his blue-scaled skin began shifting through darker shades, and his 4 muscular arms started trembling visibly. The other delegates watched in growing alarm as their leader's confident posture crumbled. "Your Taikwang," Veltar said, his voice barely above a whisper, "carries enough concentrated firepower to level an entire city district. Your defensive shields could withstand a direct impact from a massive asteroid. Your engines." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Your engines could outrun our fastest military interceptors by a significant margin." Dr. Sumin Choi, the human science advisor who had been quietly reviewing cultural notes in the corner, looked up with genuine confusion. She was a small woman with graying hair who had spent most of her career studying peaceful alien civilizations from intercepted radio signals. The fear in the chamber seemed completely unreasonable to her. "Well, yes," she said matter-of-factly, adjusting her glasses, "that's a standard exploration package for deep space missions. You never know what you might encounter when you're traveling between star systems. There could be spatial anomalies, hostile wildlife, or equipment failures that require robust systems." A collective shudder ran through the alien delegates like a wave. The reaction was so synchronized and intense that it seemed almost choreographed. The crystalline Vorth Collective's beautiful formations, which had been glowing soft blue and green, suddenly dimmed to deep purple throughout the chamber. According to the cultural briefings, this was their species' equivalent of absolute terror. The aquatic Merc representative began breathing so rapidly that his translation apparatus started making distressed bubbling sounds. His large, fish-like eyes darted between the humans and the exit as if calculating escape routes. "Standard?" he wheezed through his mechanical voice box. "This level of construction is military grade by our classifications. These are warship specifications." Around the chamber, other delegates began displaying their own species stress responses. The insectoid Clixon representative's mandibles clattered uncontrollably, while the plant-like Sylvan delegate's leaves turned brown at the edges. Even the usually stoic energy beings that represented the Photon Collective began flickering unstably. Meanwhile, aboard the Taikwang, Captain Jaiwan Park stood on her bridge watching the tactical display with growing bewilderment. The alien fleet surrounding Kepler Prime had completely reorganized itself during the past hour. What had started as a loose, welcoming formation had transformed into clearly defensive positions. Every alien vessel now maintained maximum possible distance from the human ship while still keeping weapons in range. Commander Taeyung Seo approached her command station with obvious concern written across his features. He was a veteran officer who had served on exploration missions throughout human space, and he had never seen anything quite like this situation. The alien behavior suggested they considered the Taikwang an immediate threat to their entire civilization. "Captain," he said quietly, "their fleet deployment patterns indicate they're treating us as a hostile contact. All their ships have powered weapons and raised shields. Should I begin powering down our non-essential systems to show peaceful intentions?" Maybe reducing our energy signature would help calm the situation. Jaiwan studied the displays showing alien ship positions, their weapon charges and shield configurations. Her expression remained calm, but internally she was trying to process what she was seeing. The alien vessels were clearly advanced, with clean lines and elegant designs that spoke of sophisticated technology. But their weapons seemed almost decorative, and their shields appeared designed more for protection against space debris than actual combat. "Negative, Commander," she replied after a moment of consideration. "Maintain standard operational status. If they're this frightened of a simple diplomatic cruiser, I'd hate to see their reaction to an actual human warship." Back in the council chamber, the situation continued to deteriorate. Ambassador Hannah found herself facing 12 species of aliens who seemed convinced that humanity represented an existential threat to galactic peace. The cultural exchange she had hoped to facilitate was turning into something that looked more like a military standoff. Technical Assessor Quindal was now projecting holographic displays of the Taikwang specifications for all the delegates to see. Each new revelation seemed to deepen their horror. The ship's multiple backup power systems, its redundant life support, its enhanced navigation computers designed to function even under combat conditions, all of these seemed to confirm their worst fears about human intentions. The meeting that was supposed to welcome humanity into a peaceful galactic community had become something else entirely. Both sides were beginning to realize that their definitions of normal were so different that communication itself might be impossible. The Taikwang had been traveling peacefully through deep space for exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes when the ambush happened. Captain Jaiwan Park was reviewing diplomatic reports in her ready room when the bridge alarm sounded, its sharp tone cutting through the gentle hum of the ship's engines. She arrived on the bridge to find her crew already at their stations, faces tense as they studied the tactical displays. 6 alien vessels had appeared from hyperspace directly ahead of them, arranged in what any military officer would recognize as an intercept formation. The ships were sleek and elegant, clearly built by the same advanced civilizations they had just met at Kepler Prime. "Report," Jaiwan ordered, settling into her command chair and quickly scanning the situation display. Lieutenant Commander Do-Hyun Kim looked up from his tactical station, his expression serious. 6 patrol vessels, Captain. They dropped out of hyperspace right in our flight path about 30 seconds ago. Their weapons are powered up and ready to fire, but they haven't achieved target lock yet. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the lead alien vessel. Its hull was smooth and polished, with graceful curves that spoke of a civilization that valued beauty even in their military designs. But despite its elegant appearance, the ship's weapon ports were clearly visible and glowing with charged energy. "Unknown human vessel," came a transmission from the lead ship, the voice artificially calmed through the universal translator. "You will prepare to be boarded for routine inspection. Lower your shields and shut down your engines immediately." Captain Jaiwan exchanged a meaningful glance with Lieutenant Commander Do-Hyun. She had served in space long enough to recognize the difference between a genuine inspection and something else entirely. "What are your thoughts, Commander?" Do-Hyun's fingers danced across his control panel, analyzing the alien formation. 6 ships in classic intercept pattern, ma'am. Weapons are hot but not locked on target. Either they're very bad at conducting routine inspections or this is some kind of test. From her position at the navigation console, Officer Yuna Park called out another concerning detail. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple council observation drones throughout this entire sector. We definitely have an audience watching this encounter." Jaiwan nodded slowly as the pieces fell into place. The Galactic Council had been clearly frightened by their ship's capabilities during the diplomatic meeting. Now they wanted to see exactly what humans were capable of when pushed. The routine inspection was obviously a setup designed to test human responses under pressure. "All stations go to condition yellow," she ordered, her voice calm and professional. "Do-Hyun, I want you to paint all 6 targets with our targeting systems, but don't achieve weapons lock yet. Yuna, plot an evasion course that will take us directly through their formation. Chief Engineer Miho, I need full power to engines and shields." The bridge crew responded with practiced efficiency. Warning lights shifted to amber throughout the ship, and the subtle vibration of increased engine power could be felt through the deck plates. On the tactical display, targeting solutions appeared around each alien vessel like glowing brackets. "Captain," Miho's voice came through the intercom from engineering, "all systems are running at peak efficiency. Power distribution is optimized for combat maneuvering." The alien ships began closing their formation, trying to box in the human vessel. Their movements were coordinated but predictable, following textbook formations that might work against opponents who fought by the same rules. Unfortunately for them, humans had learned their combat techniques in a much harsher school. What happened next would be studied by alien military academies for generations to come. The Taikwang didn't simply try to escape or fight back in the conventional sense. Instead, it moved like something alive, rolling and spinning through three-dimensional space with precision that seemed to defy physics. The ship dove beneath the alien formation, its hull spinning gracefully as point defense turrets tracked incoming fire. When the aliens fired warning shots across their bow, the automated system swatted the energy bolts aside like annoying insects, deflecting them harmlessly into space. One patrol vessel, apparently frustrated by the human ship's evasive maneuvers, powered up its main weapons and fired directly at the Taikwang's engines. The response was immediate and surgical. A single, precisely aimed energy burst from the human ship's weapons array struck the alien vessel's weapon systems, disabling them completely without causing any damage to life support or crew areas. The remaining 5 ships tried to adjust their formation, but they were too slow. The Taikwang wove between them like a dancer, its movements fluid and controlled. Each time an alien ship tried to get a targeting lock, the human vessel was already somewhere else, always staying just out of reach. Lieutenant Commander Do Hyun watched his displays in amazement as the engagement unfolded. "Captain, their targeting systems can't keep up with our maneuvering. They're designed for opponents who fight in straight lines." In exactly 43 seconds it was over. 6 of what the galaxy considered advanced patrol ships were floating powerless in space, their crews unharmed but their vessels completely outmaneuvered. The Taikwang hung motionless in the center of the formation, its weapons powered down and engines idling peacefully. Captain Jaiwan opened a communication channel to the disabled alien fleet. Her voice was perfectly calm and professional, showing no signs of stress or excitement from the encounter they had just survived. "This is Captain Park to all alien vessels," she announced clearly. "Thank you for the interesting training exercise. Your crews performed adequately given their equipment limitations. Please inform the Galactic Council that we are continuing to our original destination as planned." The silence that followed her transmission spoke volumes about how thoroughly the test had failed to achieve its intended results. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in complete chaos. Representatives from 12 different species filled the chamber, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, and bioluminescent flashes. The normally calm and orderly meeting space looked more like a disaster response center than a diplomatic venue. Speaker Veltar stood at the center podium, his 4 muscular arms trembling visibly as he tried to maintain some semblance of order. His blue-scaled skin had shifted to darker, more troubled hues, and his eyes darted nervously between the various displays showing recordings of the recent encounter. The other delegates sat in their specialized seating, many displaying obvious signs of distress. When the hyperspace communication link finally stabilized, the human delegation appeared on the main screen. Ambassador Hannah Kim looked tired but professional, while Captain Jaiwan Park sat beside her with the calm expression of someone who had simply completed another routine mission. "Captain Park," Speaker Veltar began, his voice shaking despite his attempts to sound authoritative, "your actions today have deeply concerned all member species of our peaceful coalition. The use of violence against our patrol vessels was completely unexpected." Ambassador Hannah leaned forward slightly, her diplomatic training helping her maintain patience despite the obvious accusation. "With respect, Speaker Veltar, if 6 of your patrol ships constituted a serious threat to any vessel, you wouldn't have survived this long as a spacefaring civilization. Any species that made it to the stars should be able to handle such a minor encounter." The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. The insectoid Clixon representative's mandibles clicked rapidly while her compound eyes reflected the stress lighting. The aquatic Merc delegate's breathing apparatus bubbled frantically, and even the usually silent energy beings that made up the Photon Collective flickered with agitated patterns. "You disabled military vessels with nothing more than an exploration ship," Veltar protested, his 4 arms gesturing wildly at the tactical displays. "Our best patrol craft were rendered helpless in less than 1 minute." Captain Jaiwan's image flickered slightly as the hyperspace communication adjusted. Her expression remained completely calm as she corrected the speaker's assessment. "No, Speaker Veltar. We disabled patrol boats using a light diplomatic cruiser. There's a significant difference in classification and capability." Before the aliens could respond, another voice joined the transmission from somewhere much closer to Earth. Admiral Kyung-Soo Baek appeared on a secondary screen, his gray hair and weathered features marking him as a veteran of many deep space missions. His uniform bore the insignia of Earth Fleet Command, and his presence immediately changed the tone of the conversation. Perhaps a demonstration would help clarify the situation, Admiral Beck said in a measured tone that somehow managed to sound both polite and ominous. Captain Suyung Yong, please bring the Soul into sensor range of their station. The alien delegates watched their sensor displays with growing confusion as space near Kepler Prime seemed to shimmer and distort. Then something massive began to emerge from hyperspace, its enormous bulk causing every detection system in the sector to activate simultaneously. The human dreadnought Soul was a monster of engineering that defied every assumption the aliens had made about spacecraft design. Where their own vessels were elegant and smooth, the Soul was angular and purposeful. Where alien ships looked like works of art, the human warship looked like a weapon that happened to be capable of space travel. The massive vessel was easily 3 times larger than the biggest ship in the alien fleet. Its hull bristled with weapon systems of every conceivable type, from massive energy cannons that could crack planets to point defense arrays that could track and destroy thousands of targets simultaneously. Armor plating covered every surface, and the ship's engine systems glowed with barely contained power. Technical Assessor Quindal's bioluminescent patches went completely dark as he processed the sensor readings. His voice was barely audible when he spoke. The energy output from that single vessel exceeds our entire defensive fleet combined. Captain Suyung Yong's voice came through the communication system with professional clarity. This is the UES Soul reporting as ordered, Admiral. All systems operational and standing by. Admiral Beck nodded approvingly before turning back to address the stunned alien delegates. That, honored council members, is what an actual human warship looks like. Captain Park's vessel, the Taikwang, is designed for diplomacy and peaceful exploration. The Soul is designed specifically for war. The reaction in the council chamber was immediate and dramatic. The Clixon representative simply collapsed, her insectoid form folding in on itself as consciousness fled. The beautiful crystal formations of the Vorth collective went completely black throughout the chamber, their shared consciousness apparently overwhelmed by terror. Several other delegates began making rapid preparations to evacuate. Speaker Veltar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides. How many ships like the Soul does humanity possess? Admiral Beck's answer was simple and delivered without emotion or boasting. Enough. The silence that followed stretched for long minutes as the implications sank in. A species that considered the Taikwang to be a minor diplomatic vessel had just revealed the existence of true warships that could probably destroy entire star systems. The galaxy's understanding of military power had just been fundamentally redefined. Ambassador Hannah finally broke the silence, her voice gentle but firm. We came here seeking peaceful relations and mutual cooperation. That hasn't changed. But perhaps now we can have more honest discussions about what peace actually means. 6 months had passed since the galaxy learned what human warships truly looked like, and the changes had been remarkable. The newly established Terran defense sector hummed with activity as ships from multiple species worked together in ways that would have been unimaginable before first contact. What had started as fear and mistrust had slowly transformed into something resembling cooperation, though it remained fragile. The human heavy cruiser Busan moved through space with confident purpose, its dark hull gleaming under the light of nearby stars. Captain Unwoo Nam stood on his bridge, watching as alien vessels maintained formation around his ship. 6 months ago, those same vessels would have fled at maximum speed rather than willingly travel alongside a human warship. Now they served as his escorts and allies. The mixed fleet was an impressive sight. The elegant curves of hegemony vessels contrasted sharply with the angular efficiency of human military design, while the crystalline structures of Vorth ships caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Each species had contributed what they could to this new defensive alliance, though everyone understood that the humans provided the real military strength. Tactical Officer Sungmin Yoon looked up from his sensor station with a concerned expression. He was a young officer who had graduated from the academy just before humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. His training had prepared him for many situations, but nothing quite like what his instruments were showing him now. Captain, Sungmin reported, his voice carefully controlled, long-range sensors are detecting unknown contacts at the galactic rim. The configuration and energy signatures suggest they're not from any known council species. Captain Unwoo moved to the tactical display, his experienced eyes quickly analyzing the data streams. The contacts were still incredibly distant, barely visible even to the Busan's advanced sensor arrays, but what they showed was troubling. The unknown vessels were large, moving in organized formations, and heading directly toward inhabited star systems. Science Officer Ji-hyo-an stood up from her station, her face pale as she processed the incoming data. She had spent years studying peaceful alien civilizations and their technologies, but these readings were completely outside her experience. Captain, these sensor readings, whatever's out there, they're massive. Much larger than anything in the Council fleets. And they're definitely heading toward inhabited systems in the outer colonies. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Everyone had hoped that humanity's integration into galactic society would bring an era of peace and cooperation. The idea that some unknown threat was approaching from the dark spaces between galaxies was the kind of nightmare scenario that military planners prepared for but hoped would never happen. Captain Eun-woo studied the tactical display for several more seconds before making his decision. His voice was calm and professional, but everyone on the bridge could hear the underlying tension. Signal the entire fleet. All ships are to go to battle stations immediately. And send an urgent message to all Council worlds. Inform them that the galaxy's guardians are moving to intercept an unknown threat. Throughout the mixed fleet, warning lights began flashing as ships prepared for potential combat. The human vessels responded with practiced efficiency, their crews having drilled for exactly this kind of situation. The alien ships took longer to reach full readiness, their crews still learning how to operate alongside human military doctrine. On the bridge of the hegemony vessel Peaceful Dawn, Captain Veltar the Younger watched the human ships begin to accelerate toward the unknown contacts. He was the son of the former council speaker who had first met the human delegation, and he had grown up hearing stories about the terrifying predator ships and their dangerous crews. But now, as something ancient and hostile stirred in the dark spaces between stars, Veltar felt only relief at the sight of human warships moving to meet the threat. His grandfather had feared these vessels and their crews, seeing them as a danger to galactic peace. Time had proven that assessment both right and wrong in ways no one could have predicted. The human ships were indeed dangerous beyond anything the galaxy had previously known. Their weapons could crack planets, their defenses could withstand attacks that would destroy entire fleets of traditional vessels, and their crews were trained for warfare on a scale that peaceful civilizations had forgotten was possible. But that danger was now pointed outward, toward whatever threatened the inhabited worlds of the galaxy. The monsters that had once frightened the Council were now the guardians that protected it. The irony was not lost on anyone who understood the situation. As the mixed fleet accelerated toward the galactic rim, long-range communications arrays began broadcasting warnings to every inhabited system within hundreds of light-years. Colonial governors prepared evacuation plans, defense stations powered up weapons that had never been fired in anger, and civilian populations tried not to panic as they learned that something unknown was approaching from the void. Captain Eun-woo stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays as his fleet moved toward contact with forces that remained completely mysterious. The unknown vessels were still days away from the nearest inhabited systems, but their size and apparent organization suggested this would not be a simple pirate raid or exploration mission gone wrong. The galaxy had lived in peace for 3,000 years, protected by distance and isolation from whatever dangers lurked in the spaces between star systems. That isolation was about to end, and everyone hoped that humanity's guardians would prove sufficient to meet whatever was coming. In the depths of space, ancient things that had slept for millennia were finally stirring, and the galaxy would soon learn whether its new protectors were truly as formidable as they claimed to be.